Welcome to Zarila HOA Stories. Drop your country or city name in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Your support keeps these true-to-life stories coming. Now let me tell you about the day my entire world shattered because of one neighbor. The HOA president everyone in our community secretly feared. Her name was Karen. It was a Sunday morning that started like any other. The sun was soft, the air calm, and my wife, Emily, was humming while making coffee in the kitchen. I remember telling her that maybe today would finally be peaceful. She smiled, that gentle, hopeful smile that always made me believe things could get better. But peace never lasts long in our neighborhood. Not with Karen living next door. Karen was the type of person who saw herself as queen of the cul-de-sac. Every mailbox, every trash can, every blade of grass had to meet her rules. If your garbage bins weren't perfectly aligned, she'd take pictures and email the HOA board. If your porch light stayed on past 10 p.m., she'd file a complaint. It wasn't just about order for her, it was about control. For months she'd been after us, warning letters, fines, and nasty looks every time we stepped outside. Emily would always tell me to stay calm, to be kind. She believed people like Karen were just lonely. But I knew better. Karen didn't want friendship. She wanted power. That morning, I went out to fix our mailbox. Karen had scratched "Rules Matter" across it the night before. My hands were still shaking from anger when I heard her voice pierce the air. "You people think you're above the HOA." I turned. She was standing on her driveway, her face red, her phone in one hand. I thought maybe she was recording another complaint video. But then I noticed her other hand. It wasn't empty. Emily came to the door behind me, holding her cup of tea. "What's happening?" she asked softly. Karen stepped closer, eyes wild. "I told you to fix that porch light. I told you to follow the rules. You never listen." I raised my hands. "Karen, put whatever that is down. Let's talk." But she didn't listen. Her voice cracked with rage. "You ruined this community. You ruined everything." Emily moved beside me. Tried to calm her. "Karen, please." Bang. The sound exploded through the quiet street. For a second, I thought it was a car backfiring, until Emily dropped her cup. The mug shattered across the porch, and crimson splattered the white wood beneath her feet. Time stopped. I couldn't hear anything except the pounding of my heart. I saw the hole in her shoulder, the shock in her eyes, the way she tried to speak, but no sound came out. "Emily!" I screamed, catching her as she collapsed. My hands pressed against her wound, warm blood soaking through my fingers. I could smell gunpowder, sharp, metallic, real. Karen's face twisted. She looked almost surprised by what she'd done. "Oh my God," she whispered, the gun trembling in her hands. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted. Call an ambulance." I shouted, my voice breaking. But she didn't move. She just stared at me, then turned and ran. As I held Emily, the world blurred. Neighbors peeked through blinds, sirens echoed faintly in the distance, and I realized something I'd never truly believed before. Our HOA wasn't about community. It was about control, fear, and power. And now, because of that, my wife was bleeding on our porch. Everything after that gunshot felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. My hands were shaking as I pressed them against Emily's shoulder, but the blood kept slipping through my fingers, warm and endless. She tried to speak, her lips trembling, but all that came out was a faint gasp. "Stay with me, Emily. Please, stay with me," I whispered, my voice cracking with every word. I could hear sirens in the distance, but they sounded miles away. I shouted again for help, hoping any of our neighbors would come out. No one did. Through the blur of panic, I saw Karen running down the street, her blonde hair wild, the gun still in her hand. For a second, she turned around, her face pale, as if she didn't believe what had just happened. Then she disappeared behind a row of houses. I held Emily closer, whispering her name over and over until the paramedics arrived. They rushed toward us, shouting quick commands I barely understood. One of them pushed me back gently. "Sir, we got her," he said, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen as they lifted her onto a stretcher. Her hand slipped out of mine, limp and cold. I followed the ambulance to the hospital, driving like a madman, my heart pounding against my chest. Every red light felt like a lifetime. By the time we arrived, my hands were still covered in her blood. The smell wouldn't leave me. They took her inside immediately. A nurse told me to wait, so I sat in the hallway staring at the floor tiles. The world felt muted, like I was underwater. The only sound I could hear was my own breathing, uneven and broken. After what felt like hours, a man in a badge approached me. "Sir, I'm Detective Carter," he said. "We've secured the scene. We'll need to ask you a few questions." I nodded silently. He took notes as I spoke, my voice hollow. I told him about Karen, the months of harassment, the constant warnings, the fines, the way she'd watched us from her window. I told him everything, even the part where she smiled the day we tried to appeal her decisions. She said people like us didn't belong here. I murmured. The detective's expression darkened. Has she ever shown signs of violence before today? No, I whispered. But she enjoyed control. She wanted to make people afraid. He sighed. We'll issue a warrant immediately. If she's armed, she's dangerous. We'll find her. When he left, I leaned against the wall, my body shaking. The hallway lights flickered above me, and somewhere far away, a phone rang. I thought about Emily, the way she'd smiled that morning, how she'd told me everything would be okay. And now she was in a room full of doctors, fighting for her life. An hour later, the doctor finally came out. His eyes were tired. "She's stable for now," he said. "The bullet missed her heart by less than an inch. We've stopped the bleeding, but she's still critical." I nodded slowly, tears spilling down my face. "Can I see her?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Only for a few minutes." When I stepped into her room, the sight broke me. Emily was hooked up to machines, her skin pale against the white sheets. Her chest rose and fell shallowly, the heart monitor beeping steadily. I took her hand carefully. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I should have protected you. I should have stopped her." Her eyes fluttered open just a little. She tried to smile, but it hurt too much. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Don't blame yourself," she breathed. I shook my head. She did this because she hated us. Because of the HOA. Because she thought she owned everyone. Emily's lips moved faintly. "Promise me you won't go after her." But I couldn't answer. I just looked at her, the love of my life lying there, because someone couldn't control their hate. When I stepped back into the hallway, Detective Carter was waiting. "We found her car," he said, "abandoned about 3 miles away. No weapon inside." My stomach turned. "So she's still out there?" He nodded. "We'll find her. But until we do, I suggest you stay somewhere safe." I looked at the hospital door, then back at him. "I'm not leaving my wife." He sighed. "Then we'll keep an officer nearby." As he walked away, I turned toward the window. Outside, the night had settled over the city, quiet and heavy. The streetlights glowed dimly through the glass, reflecting the exhaustion and pain in my eyes. I realized then that this wasn't just about one woman losing her mind. This was about something deeper, a sickness that had been festering in our neighborhood for years. And I had no idea that this was only the beginning. The hospital became my entire world for the next 2 days. I barely left Emily's side. Machines beeped rhythmically, their cold precision mocking the chaos inside me. Every breath she took felt like a fragile miracle, every flicker of her eyelids a reminder that she was still fighting. I hadn't slept. Coffee and fear kept me awake. Detective Carter came and went, always calm, always collected, with updates that told me everything and nothing at once. They still hadn't found Karen. Her car had been discovered abandoned near the woods outside the neighborhood. Her phone and wallet were still inside, but the gun wasn't. That one missing detail kept me from breathing easy. The hospital security was tight. There was an officer outside Emily's room at all times, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe it was instinct. Around midnight, I went outside to clear my head. The hospital parking lot was silent, except for the buzz of a flickering light and the low hum of vending machines. I leaned against a wall, closed my eyes, and let the night air fill my lungs. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving behind the parked cars. My chest tightened. "Hello." I called softly. No answer. I took a step forward. The shadow moved again, slow, deliberate. It was the way she used to walk during HOA meetings, confident, unbothered, always sure she was in control. "Karen," I whispered. Nothing, just the sound of crickets and my own uneven heartbeat. Then a gust of wind blew a hospital pamphlet across the pavement, startling me. By the time I looked up again, the shadow was gone. I ran back inside, telling myself I imagined it. But when I returned to Emily's room, the officer at the door looked uneasy. "Everything all right, sir?" he asked. "Yeah, I lied. Just needed some air." Emily stirred slightly in her sleep, her fingers twitching against the sheets. I sat beside her and took her hand again. "She's still out there," I whispered, "but I won't let her touch you again. I swear." The next morning, Detective Carter returned with a grim look. We searched the woods, found traces of someone camping there. Food wrappers, a torn HOA uniform jacket, same size as hers. My throat went dry. "So she's close." He nodded. "We think she's hiding nearby. We've set up patrols around your neighborhood and the hospital, but we need you to stay alert." I wanted to believe they had control, but I'd seen how Karen operated. She wasn't stupid. She planned things. She calculated them. The fact that she hadn't turned herself in meant she still had something to do, or someone to blame. Later that day, Emily finally woke fully. Her voice was weak, but she tried to talk. "Is she gone?" she asked. "Not yet," I said softly. "They're still looking." She looked terrified, eyes filling with tears. "She won't stop. You know that, right?" I nodded because I did know. Karen was the kind of person who didn't accept losing. To her, rules were sacred, and breaking them meant punishment. "I should have listened to you," Emily whispered. "I kept saying we should move away." My heart broke hearing her blame herself. "No, this isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." She looked away, tears sliding down her face. "Then why us?" I didn't have an answer. That night, as I sat by her bed, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You can't hide behind the police forever." My blood ran cold. I stared at the message, hoping it was some cruel mistake. I showed it to Detective Carter the next morning. He frowned. "It came from a burner phone. We'll trace it, but she's smart. She's not using anything trackable." I rubbed my temples, exhaustion seeping into my bones. "So what do we do?" "Keep calm. Stay protected. And don't engage," he said firmly. But how could I stay calm when the woman who tried to kill my wife was out there, watching us, sending messages like a ghost in the dark? 2 days later, the officer assigned to Emily's room stepped away for a brief call. I stayed by her side, scrolling through my phone to distract myself. Then I heard it, a faint tap on the window. My head snapped toward the sound. Outside the hospital window, on the 5th floor, there was nothing but darkness. But then movement. A figure just at the edge of the light. Standing still, watching. My stomach dropped. I rushed to the window, but by the time I reached it, the shadow was gone. I stared out into the night, my reflection trembling against the glass. Karen was out there. She was watching, and she wanted me to know. That night, as I sat in the hospital room with my wife sleeping beside me, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Karen wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. The next few days blurred together. Sleepless nights, endless fear, and the haunting thought that Karen was always one step ahead of us. I tried to act calm for Emily's sake, but every creak in the hallway, every stranger who passed by made my heart race. Detective Carter arranged for us to be moved to a safer, more private hospital wing. 2 officers guarded the entrance day and night, but it still didn't feel enough. Emily was recovering slowly. Her wounds were healing, but the trauma had carved deep into her. She barely spoke, her once bright eyes now shadowed by fear. One afternoon, she finally looked at me and said quietly, "Do you think she hates us this much just because of the HOA?" Her voice trembled. I hesitated before answering. "It's more than that. She hated losing control. The HOA was her kingdom, and we challenged her." Emily nodded weakly, turning her gaze toward the window. "I wish we'd never bought that house." I didn't respond because I felt the same. That home, our dream home, had become a nightmare built on perfect lawns and fake smiles. Later that evening, I stepped into the hospital corridor to stretch my legs. I passed by one of the nurses who smiled at me kindly. "Your wife is lucky," she said softly. You haven't left her side once. I forced a smile. She's my whole world. But as I turned the corner, I froze. There, on the small table outside Emily's room, lay a white envelope. My name was written across it in shaky handwriting. My blood ran cold. I picked it up slowly, glancing around, but no one was there. I tore it open with trembling fingers. Inside was a single photo, a picture of our house, taken from the street at night. The living room lights were on, and through the window, I could see two figures sitting inside, Emily and me. Except we hadn't been home for days. There was also a note attached. It said, "Home is where the heart bleeds." My hand shook. I ran straight to the officers outside the door and showed them the note. One of them immediately radioed Carter. Within 10 minutes, he arrived, looking grim. "She's taunting you," he said after reading the message. "She wants you scared, off balance." "She's been to our house," I said. "She took this photo recently." He nodded. "We'll send a team there immediately." That night, I couldn't close my eyes. I sat in a chair by Emily's bed, holding her hand, watching the window. The wind howled outside, and every shadow in the corner of the room seemed alive. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video. I pressed play, and my stomach dropped. The video showed our living room, the same angle as the photo, but this time, the lights were flickering. Then the camera panned slowly toward the couch. Someone had written in red paint across the wall, "I'm not done yet." I ran out to the hall, shouting for the officers. They watched the video, and one of them immediately called backup. Within minutes, Carter was there again. "She's escalating," he said quietly. "We're putting your house under full surveillance." I could barely breathe. How is she getting this close without anyone seeing her? "She's moving at night, probably using back trails," he replied. "She knows the neighborhood better than anyone." The next morning, Emily woke up crying. "I had a dream," she whispered. She was standing in the hallway, calling my name. I tried to calm her, but I felt the same dread gnawing at me. We were trapped in fear, even surrounded by police. Later that day, Carter got a call. He stepped aside to take it, his face tightening with every word. When he returned, I knew it wasn't good. "They found footprints outside your house," he said. "Fresh ones. She's been there again." My throat went dry. "When?" "Last night," he said. "And there's something else." He hesitated. "One of the officers on the surveillance team is missing." The room went silent. I stared at him in disbelief. "Missing?" He nodded grimly. "His patrol car was found near the edge of the forest." The radio was still on. Emily covered her mouth in shock. I felt my knees weaken. "She's not hiding anymore," Carter said. "She's sending a message." That night, I sat beside Emily and stared at the clock. Every minute felt like an hour. The hospital lights flickered faintly, and the storm outside rattled the windows. Then, just before midnight, the power went out. Total darkness. The emergency lights came on seconds later, dim and red. I rushed to the door. The officers were gone. I shouted their names, but there was no answer. And then, from somewhere down the hall, a woman's voice echoed faintly. It was calm, cold, familiar. "Come out, or I'll finish what I started." Emily gripped my arm, trembling. Karen was inside the hospital. The red emergency lights painted the hallway in a dim, terrifying glow. The silence between each flicker of light felt heavier than thunder. I stood frozen, my heart hammering in my chest, every muscle in my body trembling with disbelief. Karen's voice wasn't an echo in my head this time. It was real, coming from somewhere down the corridor. Emily's hand clutched mine so tightly I could feel her nails digging into my skin. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears and fear. "She's here," she whispered, barely audible. I pressed a finger to my lips, signaling her to stay quiet. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't leave her. Not again. Not after what she'd already endured. I looked around. The room had one window, too high to jump from and sealed shut. The only way out was the hallway. I took a deep breath, grabbed the metal 4-pole beside Emily's bed, and moved toward the door. The floor creaked under my weight. I peered through the small window on the door. The hallway was empty, at least for now. Then I saw it, a smear of red on the wall, right across from our door. It wasn't blood, but paint. The same dark crimson she'd used in the video. And written across it were 3 words that made my stomach drop. You left her. I didn't understand. My pulse roared in my ears as I turned back to Emily. Stay here. Don't make a sound, I whispered. She shook her head violently. No, don't go out there. But I had to. If I didn't, she'd come in. I cracked open the door and stepped into the hallway, the 4-pole clenched in my fist. The red light flickered again, and for a split second, I saw her at the far end of the corridor, Karen. Her hair was tangled, her face pale and wild, eyes burning with something dark and broken. She was holding the same gun, pointing it at the floor, her hand trembling. Karen, I shouted, my voice echoing down the hall. It's over. Put it down. She tilted her head slowly, a twisted smile crawling onto her face. Over? You think this ends just because you called the cops? Her voice cracked with rage and something else, despair. You ruined everything, Michael. Everything I built. I took a cautious step forward, keeping my voice low. You don't have to do this. Don't I? She screamed, her voice echoing off the stairwell walls. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You made me the villain. Her laughter turned to sobs. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To give your whole life to something, to a community, to order, and then have it ripped away because of people like you. I kept my distance, my grip tightening on the pole. We just wanted peace, Karen. We didn't want to fight. Peace. She took a shaky step toward me, her finger twitching near the trigger. You broke the rules. You built that fence without approval. You challenged my authority. You made me look weak. Karen, please, I said softly. Emily is barely alive. Don't make this worse. At Emily's name, her expression faltered. For a brief moment, I saw something human flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. She shouldn't have screamed, Karen muttered. If she hadn't screamed, none of this would have happened. My chest tightened. You shot her, Karen. You almost killed her. Her lip quivered. It was supposed to be you. Those words hit me like a knife. I felt my entire body go numb. What? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She raised the gun again, her hand shaking violently now. Because you humiliated me. You made the board vote against me. You destroyed everything I worked for. Before I could speak again, a sound cut through the hallway, the click of a safety being released. From behind her, Detective Carter stepped out of the shadows, gun drawn. Drop it, Karen, he commanded. It's over. Karen spun around, startled. The gun wavered between us. Stay back, she screamed. You think you can stop this? You think any of you understand? Carter's voice was calm but firm. You're surrounded. There's nowhere to go. Her breathing grew ragged. For a moment, she looked like she might surrender. But then she smiled, that same haunting, defiant smile I'd seen so many times during HOA meetings. You don't get it, do you? She said softly. I already lost everything. Then she turned the gun toward herself. No, I shouted, running forward, but before I reached her, the sound exploded through the corridor, one deafening shot that echoed like thunder. The gun clattered to the floor. Karen fell to her knees, then collapsed. The red lights continued to flicker as I stood there, frozen, staring at her motionless body. Carter rushed forward, checking her pulse. His face was grim. It's over, he said quietly. But as I looked down at her, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't. Something about the way she'd looked at me before pulling the trigger, a flicker of something knowing, stayed in my mind. Because just before she fell, I saw her lips move. No sound came out, but I could read them clearly. She'd whispered, check your home. And in that moment, I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't over. The words echoed in my head long after Karen's body was taken away. Check your home. They were the last thing she ever said, or at least the last thing I saw her say. I couldn't stop replaying that moment, the faint movement of her lips, the hollow look in her eyes. Detective Carter tried to comfort me, but I could see that he was disturbed too. Sometimes they say things that don't make sense at the end, he told me. It's just the mind breaking apart, but something about it did make sense. Karen was obsessed with control. Even in death, she wouldn't leave loose ends. There had to be a reason she mentioned my house. Emily was still recovering in the hospital, unaware of the chaos that had unfolded outside her room. I didn't want to tell her yet. She needed peace, and I couldn't give her that if I filled her head with more nightmares. The next morning, when Carter said it was safe, I decided to go home. The officers had cleared the area, but the neighborhood felt wrong. Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your chest. The moment I turned onto our street, my stomach knotted. The same house that once felt warm and welcoming now looked hollow, empty, a shell of what it used to be. Police tape fluttered across the porch, and the front door was cracked open slightly. I pushed it open, the hinges creaking. The air inside was stale, mixed with the faint smell of cleaning chemicals and something metallic. The living room looked untouched, except for the red writing on the wall that still hadn't been cleaned. I'm not done yet. I swallowed hard and stepped inside, every sound echoing through the empty rooms. The photos on the walls, the half-burned candle on the coffee table. Everything was exactly where we'd left it. But there was something strange about the floor. Near the couch, the rug was slightly lifted on one side. I crouched down and pulled it back. Underneath was a hatch I'd never seen before. A hidden storage space. I froze. We'd lived in this house for years, and I had no idea it existed. My pulse quickened as I pulled it open. The hinges groaned, and a rush of cold, dusty air hit my face. Inside were boxes, old HOA documents, name tags, meeting logs, and dozens of photos. I pulled one out, my hands shaking. It was a picture of Emily. She was gardening in our backyard, smiling, unaware that someone had been watching her. There were more, me mowing the lawn, us sitting on the porch, even a photo of us through our bedroom window at night. My heart dropped. She'd been watching us for months, maybe years. At the bottom of the pile was a small notebook. I opened it and found page after page of Karen's handwriting, her neat, obsessive script. She'd written everything down. Who came to our house, what time we left, when the lights went off. She'd been tracking our lives like a science experiment. But then, on the last few pages, her handwriting changed. It grew messy, erratic. The words were angry, frantic. He thinks he can take her from me. They're laughing at me. If I can't have peace, no one will. And then one final entry, dated 2 days before the shooting. The basement door. He'll find it. Then he'll understand. My blood ran cold. The basement door. Slowly, I stood up and turned toward the kitchen. At the far end of the hall, past the pantry, was a small wooden door that led down to the basement, a place I hadn't visited in months. The knob felt icy cold under my hand. I hesitated, heart pounding, then pulled it open. The smell hit me instantly, damp, sour like rotting wood. I flicked the light switch, but nothing happened. Grabbing a flashlight from the counter, I descended the stairs, one careful step at a time. The beam of light swept across the concrete walls, revealing old boxes, tools, and a washing machine covered in dust. And then I saw it, a small area near the back that looked newer. The bricks were a slightly different color, and the mortar looked fresh. Someone had built something recently. I moved closer. There was something behind the bricks, something covered. I dropped the flashlight, grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, and started hitting the wall. Pieces of mortar broke away, the sound echoing through the basement like gunfire. Finally, part of the wall gave in. I pulled at the edges until a small opening appeared. What I saw inside made my entire body go numb. It was a small, windowless room, no more than 5 feet wide. Inside, hanging on the wall, were dozens of photos. My wife, me, even Detective Carter. Each photo was marked with dates and short notes. And in the center, sitting neatly on a chair, was a small black box with a red ribbon tied around it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a phone, old, cracked, and dusty. The screen was on, showing a single unsent message. It was written to me. You think it's over, but she's not the only one watching. Before I could process it, the phone buzzed. A new message appeared. Welcome home, Michael. The sound came from upstairs, from my wife's phone. I dropped the box and ran up the stairs, my chest tightening with dread. The flashlight beam wavered as I burst into the living room. Emily's phone was on a coffee table. The screen lit up again. Another message. She told me everything. And then another. You should have listened. The sound of a door creaking came from the hallway. I turned slowly, every hair on my body standing on end. Someone else was inside the house. The sound of the creaking door froze me where I stood. My mind raced. The police had cleared the house, right? There shouldn't have been anyone here. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator and the low ticking of the clock on the wall, but beneath it all, another sound. A slow, deliberate shuffle from the hallway. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, the words barely louder than a whisper. No answer. Just another step. I picked up the flashlight again and aimed it toward the sound. The beam landed on the floor, a pair of footprints smeared with mud, leading from the back door straight into the house. My chest tightened. The footprints were fresh. My first instinct was to run, but Emily's phone buzzed again on the coffee table. I turned to look. Another message appeared on the screen. "She trusted you." I grabbed the phone with shaking hands, scrolling through the messages. The number was hidden, no caller ID. The earlier ones, the ones sent while Karen was alive, had come from a different source. This one was new. Before I could react, a loud thump echoed from upstairs. I flinched, pointing the flashlight toward the staircase. The beam flickered against the dark wood, each step swallowed by shadows. Slowly, I moved forward, my breath shallow. My house, once filled with laughter, movie nights, the smell of coffee, now felt alien. It was too quiet, too heavy. At the top of the stairs, I stopped. There was a faint light coming from the guest room, the door slightly ajar. I reached out and pushed it open. The room looked normal at first, but then I saw it. On the desk, near the window, sat another box, identical to the one in the basement. A small, black box with a red ribbon. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a flash drive. My hands shook as I picked it up and plugged it into the laptop sitting beside it. The screen came to life instantly, displaying a single folder titled, "Truth." I clicked it. Inside were dozens of video files, all dated months before the shooting. I opened the first one. The footage was grainy, black and white, from a hidden camera. It showed my kitchen, me making coffee, Emily reading a book at the table. Nothing unusual, until I noticed movement at the edge of the frame. Karen. She was inside our house. Not once, but many times. Watching us. Moving quietly through rooms while we slept. I opened another video. This time it was our bedroom. The camera was pointed at our bed. I felt sick as I realized these were taken at night, while we were asleep. Then one final video caught my eye, dated just 3 days before the shooting. I clicked play. The camera faced the living room again. Emily was sitting on the couch, crying. Across from her sat someone else, a man. I couldn't see his face clearly, but his voice made my blood run cold. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'll take care of her." Emily nodded. "She's losing her mind," she whispered. "You promised you'd stop her." He leaned forward, his voice low. "I will." The man turned his head slightly toward the camera, and the light from the lamp caught his face. It was Detective Carter. My knees nearly buckled. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. Carter, the man who'd sworn to protect us, who'd hunted Karen, had been in my home with my wife before the shooting. The last few seconds of the video showed him standing up and turning off the camera. The screen went black. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. None of it made sense. Why would Emily meet him in secret? Why would Karen's hidden files have this? The sound of a car engine outside snapped me back to reality. I rushed to the window and saw headlights pulling into my driveway. A police car. Carter stepped out. My pulse quickened. How could he be here now after what I just saw? He knocked on the door. "Michael, it's me. You left the hospital too early. We need to talk." I didn't move. My eyes darted between the laptop screen and the door. He knocked again, harder this time. "Open up, Michael." I could hear the calm authority in his voice, the same one that used to make me feel safe. Now it only filled me with dread. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Another message from the hidden number. "Don't trust him." The knocking grew louder. "Michael," Carter shouted. "I know you're in there." I slowly backed away from the window, my breathing shallow. If Karen was right, if her final message wasn't madness, then maybe she wasn't the only one who had lost control. The door handle rattled. "I just want to help," Carter said. But as the lights flickered above me, I saw something in the reflection of the glass door. Carter wasn't alone. Someone else stood behind him in the dark. And when that second figure stepped forward into the light, my blood froze. It was Emily. For a moment, I couldn't move. My breath caught in my throat as I stared through the window, disbelieving what I was seeing. Emily was standing beside Detective Carter, pale, distant, her expression unreadable. She shouldn't have been out of the hospital. She could barely walk, and yet there she was, standing under the porch light like a ghost from a memory I no longer recognized. "Michael," Carter called again, his voice calm but edged with command. "Please, open the door. We need to talk." Emily didn't say a word. She just stood there, her eyes fixed on the house, her face blank, empty of the warmth I knew so well. Every instinct screamed at me to stay quiet. My mind was spinning, replaying the video I'd just seen, Emily talking to Carter before the shooting, whispering about Karen, about promises, about stopping her. None of it made sense, but the weight of betrayal pressed heavy on my chest. The knocking grew harder. "Michael, if you don't open this door, we'll have to come in." My hand hovered over the doorknob. I hesitated, then took a step back. "Stay where you are," I shouted. "Don't come any closer." Carter's tone shifted, calm turning to caution. "What's going on? Did you find something?" "I found everything," I said, my voice trembling. "The videos, the files." Karen wasn't lying. Silence. Then a long exhale from Carter. "Listen to me carefully. Whatever you think you know, it's not what it looks like. She wanted you to find that." I shook my head. "No. You were in my house, Carter. You sat across from my wife. You lied to me." Finally, Emily stepped forward, her voice quiet, fragile. "Michael, please open the door. It's not what you think." That voice, soft, pleading, should have comforted me, but it didn't. It sounded rehearsed. "Hello. What did she mean?" I asked, my voice cracking. "In the video, when she said you'd stop her?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I was scared," she said. "Karen was following me, calling me every night. Carter was helping me. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to get involved." My heart twisted. It almost made sense, but something still felt wrong. "Then why didn't you tell me afterward? Why hide it?" She looked down, silent. Carter stepped closer. "Because she was protecting you," he said. "Karen threatened both of you." Emily thought keeping quiet was safer. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe both of them. But the messages, those texts, still burned in my mind. "You think it's over. But she's not the only one watching." I backed away from the door. "No, I don't trust you." Carter sighed. "I don't want to do this, Michael. But if you keep resisting, I'll have to call this in." The air grew thick, the tension sharp as glass. And then, from upstairs, a sound. A phone ringing. Carter and Emily both looked up. I turned my head toward the staircase. The ringtone was coming from the guest room, from the same laptop still open on the desk. I raised the flashlight and moved toward it slowly, every step heavy. When I reached the room, the laptop screen flickered. The video folder was still open, but now a new file had appeared, one that hadn't been there before. It was titled "Now You See." The file started playing automatically. The footage showed my living room, the same angle as before. Emily and Carter were standing near the door. Right now, it was a live feed. My skin went cold. There was a hidden camera somewhere inside the house, broadcasting everything. Then the camera shifted slightly, panning toward the staircase, toward me. Someone was moving the camera. "Michael!" Carter's voice thundered from downstairs. "Step away from that room." I spun around, flashlight shaking, scanning the walls. "What is this?" I shouted. "Someone else is in the house," Carter said. "Stay where you are." But before I could answer, the flashlight flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned slowly, heart pounding, barely breathing. I could feel it. Someone was standing there in the dark, close enough that I could hear their slow, steady breathing. "Who's there?" I whispered. No answer. Just a faint metallic sound, the click of a lighter. A tiny flame flared to life, illuminating a face just inches from mine. It wasn't Carter. It wasn't Emily. It was Karen. Her face was pale, lifeless, but she was smiling. The flame flickered, and before I could move, the lights came back on. The hallway was empty. She was gone. I stumbled backward, gasping, as Carter and Emily rushed up the stairs. "What happened?" Carter shouted, but I couldn't answer. My mind was spinning, my eyes darting to the laptop. The screen had changed again. The live feed was still playing, but now there was text flashing across it, words written in white over my own image. Did you really think she'd die that easily? The screen went black, and in the silence that followed, somewhere deep within the walls of the house, a woman's laughter echoed, soft, distant, and unmistakably familiar. The sound of that laughter froze the blood in my veins. It wasn't an echo from my memory. It was real, present, vibrating through the walls like the house itself was breathing with her voice. Emily screamed, backing away from the laptop, while Carter drew his gun and swept the room. "Stay behind me," he barked. But I couldn't move. My eyes were still locked on the dark screen. That message, "Did you really think she'd die that easily?" burned itself into my mind. Karen was dead. I'd seen her body. I'd watched them load her into the ambulance. There was no way she could still be alive. Unless everything I thought I knew had been a lie. I turned to Emily. "You told me she was gone. You told me I thought she was," she cried. "Michael, I swear." Carter motioned for silence. "We need to move. Now. Someone's in this house, and they know exactly where we are." We moved slowly down the hallway, the sound of our footsteps swallowed by the oppressive quiet. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot. I could feel the air growing colder with every step. It was as if the house itself was trying to warn us. When we reached the stairs, the lights flickered again, once, twice, then went out completely. Carter's flashlight beam cut through the darkness. He motioned toward the front door. But then, faintly, a sound drifted from the basement, a low, rhythmic thump. Emily whimpered, "No, no, please don't go down there." Carter gave her a sharp look. "What's in the basement, Emily?" She shook her head frantically. "Nothing. I haven't been down there since." "Since what?" I demanded. Her voice trembled. "Since the night it happened." I didn't wait for more. I pushed past Carter and yanked the basement door open. The smell hit me first, damp air mixed with something metallic. The thumping continued, steady and deliberate. Carter grabbed my arm. "Wait, you don't know what. I need to see." I descended the steps, one hand on the railing, the other gripping the flashlight. The deeper I went, the colder it got. My breath was visible in the beam of light. At the bottom, the thumping stopped. "Hello." I called into the darkness. No answer, just silence, and then, slowly, the sound of something rolling across the floor. The flashlight flickered, then steadied on a figure sitting in the far corner. A mannequin, one of Emily's old art props, dressed in a pale blue dress that looked exactly like the one Karen wore the night of the shooting. Pinned to its chest was a note. I stepped closer and read the words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "You've buried the wrong woman." My stomach dropped. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't real." Carter's voice came from behind me. "Step back, Michael." But I didn't. I ripped the note off and turned toward him. "What does this mean? You told me she was dead. You said you saw the body." He looked uneasy. I did see it. I was at the scene. I signed the damn report. But there was something off. No fingerprints matched. The face was. He hesitated. Burned beyond recognition. Emily gasped. "You said it was her." Carter shook his head slowly. "We assumed. The clothes, the hair color, the ID in her pocket, it all pointed to Karen. But if someone switched bodies..." The rest of his sentence was drowned out by the sound of footsteps upstairs. Heavy, deliberate. We all froze. Carter motioned to kill the light. The basement went black. We stood there, silent, listening as the footsteps moved from one room to another, slow and careful, like someone was searching. Then, faintly, a voice drifted down the stairs. "Michael, come upstairs." It was Karen's voice. Calm, mocking. "You left me behind. You watched me fall. And now, I'm still here." Emily clung to my arm, shaking. "It can't be her," she whispered. "It can't." Carter's jaw tightened. "Stay here." He started up the stairs, gun raised. But before he reached the top, something slammed the basement door shut. The lock clicked. We were trapped. Carter ran up and tried to break it open, but it wouldn't budge. Then we heard her again, closer this time, right above us. "You think you can hide from me, Michael?" she said softly. "I know every inch of this house. You can't escape me now." The basement lights flickered on, bright, blinding white, and the mannequin in the corner was gone. In its place stood a figure in the blue dress, still as stone, and when it raised its head, the faintest smile crossed its face. Karen, alive, or something pretending to be. Emily screamed, and the lights exploded, plunging us back into darkness. Then came the sound of a gunshot, deafening, close, echoing off the concrete walls. Someone fell, and everything went silent. The gunshot shattered the air, echoing through the basement like thunder trapped underground. For a moment, none of us moved. I couldn't even breathe. My ears rang, and the smell of gunpowder mixed with the damp, metallic air. "Carter!" I shouted, but there was no answer. My flashlight rolled away, its beam spinning wildly across the walls until it landed on a dark figure slumped near the stairs. It was Carter. He was lying on his side, motionless, his gun a few feet away. Emily's trembling hand clutched my sleeve, her breathing sharp and uneven. "Michael, please," she whispered. "We have to get out of here." I crouched beside Carter, my hands shaking as I checked for a pulse. It was faint, weak, but still there. The bullet had grazed his shoulder, leaving a dark streak of blood across his shirt. He stirred, groaning. "She's upstairs," he muttered. "Don't let her." Then from above, we heard footsteps again, slow, deliberate, and getting closer to the basement door. "Karen." Emily covered her mouth to muffle a sob. "She's going to kill us." I grabbed Carter's gun, even though I had no idea if I could use it. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely think straight. Every instinct told me to run, but there was nowhere to go, no window, no exit. Just the locked door in the dark. The doorknob rattled. Then a voice, low and calm, floated down the stairs. "Michael," Karen said softly, "you shouldn't have looked for the truth." Emily whimpered, backing away into the shadows. "Please," she cried, "whatever you want, just leave us alone." A pause. Then laughter, quiet, chilling. "I already took what I wanted," Karen said. "Now I'm just here to finish what you started." The lock clicked. The door began to open. I aimed the gun toward the stairs, my finger trembling on the trigger. The beam from the flashlight flickered again, once, twice, and then I saw her. Karen stepped into view. Her hair was matted, her skin pale as chalk, her dress stained and torn. But her eyes, they were alive, burning with something I couldn't explain. "You buried the wrong woman," she said again, smiling faintly. "You thought you were rid of me, but I was always one step ahead." I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. Emily screamed and tried to run, but Karen's hand shot out, slamming her against the wall. "You," Karen hissed. "You were supposed to keep quiet." "Please." Emily sobbed. "I didn't mean for any of this. He was supposed to protect me." Karen's expression twisted. "Protect you? He's the reason this happened." She turned her gaze toward me. "Tell her, Michael. Tell her what you did." I froze. "What are you talking about?" Karen laughed bitterly. "You don't remember, do you? That night, the night everything went wrong. You called me. You asked me to come to your house. You said Emily was in danger." "That's not true," I said, shaking my head. "I never." But the memory hit me like a sledgehammer. The phone call, the panic in my voice, the way I'd beg her to help, and then the gun going off. Emily's scream, the blood. My knees weakened. "No," I whispered. "No, that can't be." Karen's smile widened. "You don't get to forget, Michael. You wanted to protect her. But when I showed up, you pulled the trigger first." I stumbled backward, my hand shaking as I lowered the gun. "You're lying. You're lying." Emily stared at me, tears streaming down her face. "Michael, what did you do?" Before I could answer, Karen lunged forward. Carter, still weak but conscious, fired his gun again, a deafening crack that echoed through the basement. Karen jerked back, hit square in the chest. She fell hard against the concrete floor. For a long moment there was silence. Then the sound of Emily's ragged breathing filled the air. Carter slumped against the wall, clutching his wound. "It's over," he rasped. But something about Karen's body didn't look right. Her eyes were still open, glassy but focused. And as we watched in horror, her lips began to move. "You can't kill what's already dead," she whispered. The lights flickered once more. The bulbs burst. Total darkness swallowed us. And from that blackness came the sound of footsteps, not one pair, but several, circling us in the dark, slow and methodical. Emily screamed. I reached out for her, but my hand grasped only air. Then, a whisper right behind my ear. Part of you always wanted me gone, the voice breathed. Now you'll know what it feels like to lose everything. The gun was ripped from my hand. Another shot rang out, closer than before. And the last thing I saw before everything went black was Emily's face, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream, and the faint, cold smile of someone who'd come back from a grave. When the shot went off, everything froze. The ringing in my ears drowned out the world, the screams, the sound of shattering glass, even my own heartbeat. For a moment, I thought time had stopped. Then, as the smoke cleared, I saw Emily lying on the cold floor, her white nightgown soaked in red. Emily! I dropped to my knees beside her, my hands shaking violently as I pressed them to her wound. No, 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 stay with me. Please. Her eyes fluttered open, barely focusing. Michael, she whispered. You didn't mean to. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't do this. I swear I didn't. But before I could finish, Carter groaned from the corner. He was still alive, barely sitting upright, his face ghostly pale. She's gone, Michael, he muttered weakly. I looked around. Karen's body, the one that had fallen, was gone. The pool of blood where she'd been was vanishing, soaking into the concrete like the floor was swallowing it whole. No, I whispered. No, she was right there. Carter tried to stand, wincing in pain. We have to get out of here. I shook my head. Not without Emily. But when I turned back, Emily's hand slipped from mine, limp, lifeless. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, glassy and distant. A sound tore out of me, something raw and broken. The kind of sound you only make when your soul is ripping apart. The basement lights flickered one last time. And then I saw her, Karen, standing at the top of the stairs, her blue dress glowing faintly under the flickering bulb. She looked peaceful, almost calm. I told you, she said softly. You can't run from what you did. Why? I cried. Why are you doing this? What did I ever do to you? Her expression changed, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. You don't remember everything, do you? She said. You think I was the villain, but I was trying to protect her. Protect you. I stared at her, speechless. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. The night of the shooting, it wasn't supposed to happen. Emily called me. She said you were out of control, that you'd found out about her and Carter. She begged me to come, and when I did, you were holding the gun. No, I said hoarsely. That's not true. Isn't it? She whispered. You fired. You hit her first. I tried to stop you. That's when you turned on me. The world spun. Images flooded my head, fragments I'd buried deep. Emily's terrified face. My own trembling hands. The flash of the gun. No, I whispered again. That can't be. Karen's eyes filled with tears. You buried the wrong woman because you couldn't face what you did. You buried the truth. I dropped to my knees, the gun slipping from my hand. Then why come back? I asked through tears. Why haunt me? Her voice softened. Because the truth was never meant to be buried. I just wanted you to remember. And then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone. The lights went out completely, plunging me into darkness. When I came to, I was sitting in the back of an ambulance. The flashing red and blue lights painted the night in waves of color. Two officers spoke quietly nearby. One of them was Carter, alive but pale. He wouldn't look at me. Where's my wife? I asked, my voice hollow. The paramedic hesitated. She's gone, sir. I'm sorry. I looked past them toward the house, or what was left of it. The basement door hung open, the frame splintered, smoke curling from inside. And in the dim light of dawn, I could swear I saw a figure standing at the window, a silhouette in a pale blue dress. Karen. She didn't move. She just stood there, watching. A chill ran down my spine as the officer shut the ambulance door. Days passed after that, but the nightmares never stopped. Every night I saw her, standing at the edge of my bed, her voice whispering the same words over and over again. You can't bury the truth forever. I tried to convince myself it was guilt. That was just my mind unraveling after everything that had happened. But last night, I woke up to the sound of a phone ringing downstairs. When I answered it, there was only static. And then, faintly, through the crackling noise, "Michael," she said, "I told you I'd never leave." The line went dead. Now I'm sitting here, alone, staring at the dark reflection in my window. I can still see her in the glass, smiling faintly, as if she's waiting for me to finally admit what I did. Maybe she's right. Maybe I did pull the trigger. Maybe this is what I deserve. But sometimes, when the house grows quiet and the lights flicker like they did that night, I swear I can still hear Emily's voice too, whispering from the shadows, "Help me." And that's when I realize maybe none of them ever left. Maybe the house didn't just hold memories. Maybe it held them. So if you're still here listening, if you made it this far, remember this. Sometimes the dead don't haunt you for revenge. Sometimes they stay because the truth still needs to be told. And as for me, I think it's time to stop running. Because the moment I close my eyes tonight, I know she'll be waiting, right there in the dark. Thank you for watching Zarila HOA Stories. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, your city or country. And remember, some stories never end.